Good morning, Whale Fam. We have a very, very exciting presentation today with Emma from Digitalax. So welcome, Emma. I'm super excited to have you here and be able to share with the community this awesome project that you are rolling out with the digital wearables. It's super because it's fashion and digital wearables, and I personally am excited about the CryptoKitties purse, but I think the community is really going to love what you have going on, and you will be sharing, I believe, your screen so that way you can. Oh, and then we can see your face too. This is perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got you, and you'll be able to show us all of the awesome things that your project is working on.
Perfect. No, thank you, Moose. I'm excited to be here, and thank you everyone for kind of tuning in and listening. I guess, to kind of just jump right in and give more background about Digitalax and what the project is, what we're doing. So at a very kind of high level, we are a digital fashion NFT project or protocol built on Ethereum. And we're bringing kind of a lot of concepts forward around a number of different vertices, particularly focusing on like an NFT side and how you can bring more scalability and kind of tangible value, liquidity, stability to these NFTs, kind of addressing more problems in the space around that side. But really, if I look at the bigger vision of the project and what we're trying to achieve, it's more focused towards gaming and how you can create a highly efficient and streamlined digital supply chain to be able to ship content into games much more efficiently, much more faster. And it's kind of, I'd say, a bigger shift in the industry that we're focusing on when it comes to gaming and VR. If you think about, more of the traditional side as well, a lot of the space now is about how you can kind of get content out to users, get more higher quality content out to users faster. So we're looking at how you can streamline that whole end-to-end process with designers and developers and a bigger focus on the digital fashion side. So that's kind of a big part of our project, and we're starting really with the crypto ecosystem and quite native here. Crypto is kind of an amazing space. I mean, I've been in it for a number of years, and it enables you to kind of work with different business models and say concepts that just wouldn't work in a traditional space. And NFTs, although it's kind of still an early adoption stage, really see them as this highly scalable distribution channel for virtual and digital goods in the future. So there's still a long way to go before that kind of gap or bridge closes between the traditional side and NFTs in the crypto space and gaming, but it's really the bigger vision and what we're going after. So that's kind of it in a whole. Possibly just to add in and kind of get a bit more philosophical, I guess the whole kind of base of Digitalax and the company and what we wanted to do here was, a lot of it was founded around first principles of human nature and these idea of kind of identity and self-expression. It's, like I'd say, a core part of our human culture that has been around for thousands of years. You can go back to ancient Egyptian times, go back to 1500s, and the idea of people wanting to self-express and be able to show their identity and who they are, it's really key to what we hold as value. So a big part of the way we do that is often through our fashion, what we wear, our clothing. I know fashion is kind of an industry that can sound quite frivolous or superficial, but if you really take and you break it down into these core concepts, it really comes from that idea of being able to express your identity. And when you see kind of the trajectory of gaming, VR, and these virtual worlds becoming so much more hyper-realistic, and it's really not going to slow down, it's just going to get faster and faster. As more players and people start to interact with these worlds, not just from an entertainment perspective, but across multiple kind of vertices, self-expression and identity is going to play a huge part, and a big market segment of that is going to be the digital-only fashion side. So really at a bigger scale, that's kind of the industry that we're going after. It's what we're wanting to bring, new concepts, new standards, really help scale and grow the space, particularly from a designer and developer side. There's a big gap now with kind of enabling designers to be able to connect with developers and like I said, on that supply chain side and enable faster distribution. So I've kind of given a very long-winded first look into our project, but we're really touching on a lot of areas, and the bigger part is how we can kind of enable the future of these digital economies.
Gosh, that is such an amazing vision for your project. I'm super excited about, absolutely the self-expression and the importance of that. That's something that I think we've seen a lot in our community with, the different creators making the art pieces. And we do have a lot of gatherings in the metaverse where people have wearables and they're trying to really, customize their appearance. So for your project and creating more of those wearables, that's super hype. So do you want to guide us through, kind of the design process, or like what sort of a trip are you taking us on today?
Sure. So maybe I'll actually just share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. I'm kind of new to Discord. Now, Moose, okay on the Chrome tab?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. We can see it.
Perfect. So to kind of just dive right in, as I said before, the whole concept is around this supply chain and how you can really bring more efficiency to that side and streamline that whole process. So what we're kind of doing is breaking that down into a number of key components that we feel kind of, set the foundational framework for being able to achieve our bigger vision. So on our platform, to kind of take a step back and start from the beginning on what we're doing, we are working with a number of digital fashion designers globally. And if I show you here, we have a network of over 30 digital fashion designers. They're amazingly talented. Their core focus is all around 3D software and 3D modeling, but for fashion. They're, as I said, located all around the world, possibly kind of every location you can really imagine, and really talented at what they do. So we're partnering with a number of digital fashion designers to work with us to kind of create amazing hyper-realistic digital fashion pieces that will be sold on our site at auction, and also through other sales channels. We have our first auction starting at the end of this week, but I'll go into more details about that later. But all of these digital fashion pieces are issued in the site under the ERC 721 standard. And every ERC 721 also has ERC 1155, what we're calling child NFTs, that are attached to those 721 garments. And these ERC 1155 child NFT tokens are really what is making up the modular components of that bigger garment. So you can think of it kind of like the raw materials, patterns, textures, or even raw elements or crypto assets that can be kind of mixed and matched and combined together to then build up that 721 bigger whole garment construction. And in terms of kind of the standards and going more of a technical side as well touch on that, we're taking inspiration from the ERC 998 standard, but instead of ERC 20 being linked with that master 721 token, we're focused on using just the ERC 1155s. So in terms of how these child NFTs are created or formed, to take you through a bit more of that process, the whole idea was, again, how you could kind of add more value to these NFTs, both from a stability point of view and also liquidity. Because a bigger problem saw in the space was a lot around the opaqueness on pricing, like how you actually value an NFT, or how you could kind of offer it more interoperability, particularly from a DeFi side. I mean, we saw that huge DeFi hype earlier in the year over the summer period, and then the next inevitable stage was all around how you could actually bring NFTs and unlock their value into these different money markets. So a problem that our team looked a lot at was, okay, even if you have, say, a very high value crypto kitties that could be worth, say, over 20 Ethereum or even more, maybe you could lock that up on a money market and you could use that as collateral, and a lender could accept that and allow you to kind of take out a credit line or borrow off of that. But still, from a lender's risk point of view, it is kind of a very difficult idea, because if the borrower does default or something goes wrong and the loan can't be repaid back, they have this high valued NFT, but when it comes to really being able to say sell that on a secondary market like OpenSea within a shorter amount of time, there's no real clarity around that for them. It could possibly take 2 months, it could take 2 years, and there's no guarantee like when we have our fungible tokens like Bitcoin or Ethereum that you can actually get the price that was originally paid for that. So we took a lot of inspiration from this to come up with this idea of called the Digitalax Factory Vault, in how you can actually mint and form these child NFTs to then link them with master parent tokens and have them add more value. So to now go into more details of how exactly this works, these child NFTs are kind of created in 3 ways on our platform. So people can come on when they bought the actual master garment, say through one of our auctions or the sales platform, and they can come on and they can actually then lock up some crypto or real world kind of crypto backed asset, say like a DGX gold coin or even wrapped BTC itself, and they can lock up different amounts of these assets. And then they can mint on that synthetic ERC1155s that are actually then backed by their locked assets. So you could come up and you could lock up, say, 100 DGX coins, and then you'd be able to mint a synthetic 1155 that is now representing and actually, backed by that 100 DGX. And then you can, through our platform, that automatically pegs that ERC synthetic 1155 into the 721 master token that you hold. So that's kind of the first way. The second way that we're allowing people to kind of be able to add more value and peg that into their NFTs. If you wanted to get exposure from an asset that, say, doesn't have a specific crypto coin or it isn't a specific crypto asset, you can also do that. So we're working with on-chain Oracle providers and off-chain Oracle providers that will actually stream in price feeds from different assets that will allow users to get exposure to. So for example, if you wanted to kind of have exposure to silver or even like cotton or diamonds, you could come on the platform, you could lock up some stable asset like DAI that is sitting around the current spot price of that, say, diamonds, and then you could mint a synthetic 1155 of your collateral that you've locked up. And this synthetic 1155, it's different to the first way I described, and this one is actually tracking the price feed from these oracles in real time. So you would have to kind of lock up some stable asset that is sitting around a margin of what that spot price feed is, and then you can mint that synthetic asset and put it in your 721 master garment. So really what we're doing here, and kind of the bigger cool thing, is that if you think about if you had, say, like a gold dress, or what I've got on my screen here, this example of like a Bitcoin gold chain accessory, you could come on and you could actually then back that gold coin or accessory by gold or by diamonds or even by kind of wrapped BTC itself. So you're creating this whole new kind of synthetic NFT contract that now has this kind of liquidity, extra stability, and tangible value built within it. So if you're going to take that to a money market like DeFi, or even just sell it on a secondary market, in terms of a pricing side, there's kind of more value that's been added there. But I guess the bigger innovation really comes from this idea of interoperability with money markets and being able to lend these NFTs. Because now from a lender's point of view, if they're accepting this NFT or synthetic contract wrapper, if the borrower does default or there is a high risk and they need to actually take that NFT and try and liquidate it on a secondary market, they're kind of now underwriting with this non-fungible token with this fungible liquidity, but still staying within an NFT standard and scope. So they could now take the different ERC1155 modules, and they could then access the collateral and the crypto and tangible asset lockup and liquidity that is sitting within our vault, and be able to immediately kind of sell that off in a secondary market and leverage on that fungibility. So that's kind of one of the sides that we're looking at. I know I probably went through that quite quickly, and hopefully some of it makes sense, but really it was a lot around printing these synthetic ERC1155s and then being able to add value into the master token or 721 that you're wanting to attach that with. So that's kind of the first two ways. There is one other way that these child NFTs and 1155s can actually be created. And this way sits a little bit outside of kind of having this real collateral backing. And the third way, it's all around looking purely from the point of the actual patterns and materials themselves. Because what we see in the future, again, this is a longer term vision, but something really quite interesting is this idea of open source fashion and fractional garment ownership. So if you think about right now in the fashion industry, open source isn't really a thing, and everything's very kind of mafia driven and closed off. But what we see at the future, particularly when you're talking about the digital side and digital only, this amazing composability that patterns, materials, textures can have, and how designers and developers will be able to leverage off these individual fragments themselves to then build up master garments. So what we're also enabling, and this is a future step that will come through, is designers will also be able to, instead of just creating these master garments, they will also be able to look kind of more, as I said, at this modular level of even, creating just these amazing patterns or different materials and textures themselves. Because we are digital, we're not bound by physical principles anymore. We can kind of have endless materials. We can do crazy things that defy physics when it comes to textures and what you can wear and type of patterns you can make. So designers can actually create these individual patterns, and they can put them within our digital material, texture and pattern libraries on the platform. And they can allow people to come on and to buy these and then use them to actually create their master garments. So I could be a designer and I could say, create this cool pattern here. And instead of putting it in my garment, I want to actually open source that and put that in the Digitalax material and pattern library. And now another designer could come on and like that pattern or some part of it, and they could then take that through an open source license and use that in their garment, but still giving royalties back to that original creator. So this is kind of a bigger part we looked at. And again, a big problem was, still on a pricing side, it's a bit opaque. So it was about introducing the ability to have each of these materials and patterns kind of tracked through price bonding curves that the designers could even decide on themselves about how they want to actually deal with supply and demand and pricing of their individual materials. So then when people come on, it's kind of much more transparency there in terms of how they would interact with them and what these pricing factors would be. And again, then you could build up, say, using multiple, a designer using multiple of these materials or patterns, or even a developer to build a master garment. They're now attaching that into the 721, but because all of these individual materials and patterns have been kind of transparently shown through these pricing bonding curves, you now have a much more transparent pricing range of what your master garment should be. So that's kind of a lot from the pricing side and bringing more stability and liquidity to and value to the NFT space. It was really about how we could bring new standards, how we could kind of grow out different sectors. Because again, as I said, I really see NFTs as an amazing and scalable distribution channel, particularly for just completely digital and virtual goods. It seems obvious that is where the future is going, but there's still a lot of underlying problems that we need to address and we need to start looking at. Not saying that these are all the answers, but I think it's great that we can take kind of the next steps in really getting there. So, Moose, I'll let you ask kind of any questions, but that's kind of the first part. But then after that, I'll kind of go on to the bigger vision of really what we're trying to do.
Oh my gosh, so we've already gone over so much and there's still a bigger vision. This is exciting. So one of the things that I saw the community commenting on was the excitement. George Boya had commented about the fact that designers can actually create whole collections now. And that is amazing. And so this, I guess, for me, not having a lot of experience in fashion, aside from understanding that there are, brands in the real world, which is an interesting concept because, you know, the metaverse for a lot of us has become the place that we interact with more than, you know, out in the world. But there are brands that have like specific logos or patterns and textiles. And now we're able to actually pull that into the metaverse and use those same concepts, you know, with these tokens that you are creating. And I think that's amazing. So what sort of, I guess, the vision here, is this something that designers will need to be associated with your platform? Is this something that any designers can get in? How will people be able to be involved from a creation side?
Great question. So if I look purely at kind of this material and pattern side and what I talked about here, to start with, just because we're new and we're kind of testing, kind of like pioneering different waves of innovation, we are working with so far around 30 digital fashion designers globally. But every day we're bringing on board new designers, new kind of 3D experts in a sense, to work with us with Digitalax and really bringing forward our vision. So kind of to narrow that down, to start with, we're, you know, kind of individually looking with designers and working with them and keeping it very designer focused. But eventually it really is about how you can open this up. So even if you think from a player perspective, and again, I'm kind of touching on probably more of a supply chain aspects soon, so this may not make sense, but when I cover other parts, it probably will more. Say if you're a player and you want to actually have a digital dress, maybe you could actually come onto these libraries in a sense, and you could choose and mix and match across different materials, different textures, and then put those together and then work with a designer, you know, through the platform or through the materials themselves to then build up this master garment that now you could take into your game environment. So to start with, it's kind of designers a lot more that would be leveraging on this side, but eventually it's about how you can just open that up so you have kind of this whole amazing marketplace and ecosystem of digital libraries that can be leveraged by a designer, a developer, a player, a user, a buyer, whatever kind of category they fit in.
That is amazing, and it's awesome to see that your project has really taken that holistic perspective and, you know, starting with, you know, the basics, working with the designers, but then having a plan to expand to the player base as well. Having that freedom, that's amazing. So where do we go from here?
Sure. So to kind of just get even more down the rabbit hole, as I said, the biggest side, it was all about the efficiency of a digital supply chain, and how you can ship content into games more efficiently, faster, have like more of a streamlined connection between a designer and developer. And the core kind of idea with this, it was really looking at the industry and where the gaming and VR industry is going. So to kind of give, I'm sure most of you listening, you know, really fully understanding and aware of gaming and VR, but there's been a bigger shift in the past few years where it used to be that a lot of these game companies and developers, they would make everything in-house. It'd be very much like a premium model as well. So it'd be boutique style, every single digital asset kind of within a game. Like you think about a weapon or even a rock, it would all be created, you know, highly boutique in-house. But then there was this big shift, and I guess Fortnite played a big role in kind of enabling this, was to these freemium models, where now kind of revenue streams and the business model itself is really built on content and how much content you can bring into players, because it's all about these microtransactions and players kind of buying, you know, the individual assets themselves, whether that's from more like a cosmetic perspective for their character or leveling up within the game itself. So when we looked at this side and kind of this bigger industry trend, it was kind of an obvious thing for us that it was, well, it's all about then how you can actually streamline the content shipping process, because that's going to be a big thing in the future. And I do believe that the future of gaming and VR, again, it's not tomorrow, it's a number of years away, but we are getting there. It's more about this interoperability and a seamless digital experience. So what I do believe that the future is all about, that if you're a player in GTA, you would want to be able to actually take your identity from GTA and put that, say, in Fortnite, or put that in another game itself, and then have that fit your new identity. When you've taken it from Fortnite and you put it in GTA, it now fits with the actual look and feel and graphic environment of GTA. So this whole idea of like a seamless digital experience, I really think that's where we're headed, because having kind of like siloed platforms where it's just like you go in and you only exist within that digital world or that digital environment, I think that it's not really where we are in the future. I mean, if you think about, our behaviors with Facebook, Instagram, all this social media, we usually have kind of a consistent identity across all of them. We're not kind of, being one person on one and then a completely different person on the other. We're usually building up like this whole really strong foundation of self-expression. And so the next stage of that is, okay, we're doing that now through screen-to-screen interaction, but the next stage is actually that immersive 3D, like what you're saying, Moose, with metaverses, and how we really are interacting through those right now. So it just makes sense to me that would be the next step of digital kind of seamless experience. So again, content, when you think about from that perspective, being able to have streamlined shipping and interoperable shipping of content across graphic environments, it's going to be absolutely like a huge must and need, and something that we will just end up taking for granted that we don't have now. So just kind of giving that background and now going into more the platform and our tech and what we're doing. Again, it was about how you could have this, a really efficient supply chain. So how we kind of broke it down was that all of these, as I said, ERC1155, like patterns, materials, elements that are part of our platform or come into our platform, they're all under an open source license wrapper. So it's kind of a unique digital fashion focused open source license wrapper that we created, and we're embedding with all of these ERC1155s, which means that any designer or developer, or as I said, scaling up for the future, whoever can be able to leverage off these to use them within their design kind of content creation, but still being able to give royalties back to the original designer, which is one of these amazing things about NFTs and being able to have ownership tracked on chain. So that was like the first side, is how you can actually take kind of control of the licensing, or not control, but how you can kind of take standard on that licensing and IP side, because that's something really important for designers, is knowing exactly how their materials are used and making sure that they would still be able to get, the credit that they deserved on that. That was the first side. And then the second part that I looked at and I just kind of walked you guys through was all around the pricing side and how you can really bring in tangible real world value and backing to some of these NFTs, whether that is doing kind of highly crypto native things like, locking up some DGX and minting a synthetic gold, which we're very aware. I mean, that is more of a crypto native side, and it's something that right now wouldn't really work from so much traditional gaming side. There could be things there in the future, but that was more as well looking at a DeFi components and composability there and the mechanics that we could bring forth. So once you kind of have this, as I said, this open source, this licensing wrapper taking care of the pricing wrapper, then you're kind of building up now a sorted digital library of these materials, these patterns, these textures, and it's allowing for this modularity, this composability, and even, like I said, this fractionalization of the garment into these key modules that can then be taken into a peer-to-peer marketplace. And you have your game players, you have your game developers, your designers that are really kind of working in this trifecta to swap, mix and match materials. You have game developers that could actually want to leverage them and work with a designer to take those into their game and say have a unique collection. You have game players that even would want personalized and customized skins or wearables, and they'd want to work with the designers and the developers to provide that design framework and also the interoperability. And then you have a whole now amazing distribution channel and exposure for digital fashion designers, which they just do not have currently at all. There's nothing out there for them to really be able to access their two biggest markets in a sense, which is gaming and VR. And that's what it will just continue to be in the future. So a lot of this side as well was how you can enable the digital fashion designer to, bring their creativity into the digital economy, into the future. Just like, 7 years ago, it was kind of like you had to have a brick and mortar store as a designer, as a fashion designer, in order to survive. But now you don't have to leave your bedroom or your house, and you could create a whole amazing creative collection and then put that up on an e-commerce site, or even, create your own kind of tailored boutique website. So it's that next stage as well that we're moving into with these industries. It's about going completely digital and then enabling creators and designers to have very streamlined access and exposure to kind of their core markets. So that was that side there, is then having all of this in that peer-to-peer marketplace and allowing that hyper efficient kind of collaboration and network. And if you think about the business models that come out of this and amazing things from a designer and developer perspective, I'm sure a lot of you heard about that Travis Scott concert in Fortnite, a little, not so long ago, a little while back. If you think about it from a merchandising perspective, now, in-game concerts will be a big thing in the future. Imagine if designers could work directly with developers through the platform to actually create, specific merchandise now for some of these concepts that, and even limited and exclusive lines that players could then come, they could wear specifically for that event, or that particular kind of show. So kind of amazing new concepts and models are really emerging like this, that we really wanted to, through our supply chain, kind of look at, okay, what would those business models be for a designer and a developer, and how could we build around them? So then kind of moving into the next phase, it's all about like that selection side, about, as I said, that cross collaboration where developers, they can kind of choose these materials, players as well, and then mix and match them to work with designers to create these whole transparently priced now, and have this legal wrapper in a sense of that licensing side as well. And then this is kind of moving to the next stage again, kind of just showing the process of then being able to really back and have that tangible value in that whole garment. It's not just now, just creating some rendered PNG. You're really doing something different. And this is where we looked a lot at the future of our platform, how we're kind of starting and scaling back and just taking the first step to getting there, particularly from that peer-to-peer marketplace side. As I mentioned, we're starting with auctions, single edition ERC 721 auctions. Our first auction goes live this Friday. And it was just a first step to show, okay, this is like the designers, this is digital fashion, and this is their first distribution and exposure channel that they can kind of leverage to at least kind of get in front of the community, show their designs and the amazing creativity that they have. But eventually, we're not trying to be a super rare, we're not trying to be a rareable. The auction platform is just that first step to then building this whole marketplace based on these digital libraries. So one kind of unique thing, that I'll just touch on a little bit to bring some more concept from that marketplace side in our auctions. Every auction that we hold or sale on Digitalax of 3D garments or accessories, all the data is stored in IPFS, but we're also kind of backing these garments as well by the FBX file. So the FBX file, it's a type of 3D model file format, and it provides the most interoperability of taking your model from, say, like the creation stage, like a platform like Maya or Clo3D. These are just different 3D softwares that you can build 3D fashion in. And then being able to take that into a game engine like Unreal Engine, Unity, to allow developers to actually incorporate that into their game development process and include things like animation, have all of the texture data and different kind of metadata there about the garment. So all of these garments actually have the FBX file that we're putting in IPFS. And to start with, this is more like, I'd say, a conceptual side, because our first auctions, we don't have in-game interoperability to start with, but it's this future thing that in the future, when our whole platform really is scaled up, these FBX files can then be taken and reworked by the developers and put within these graphic environments. So it's providing kind of that future-proofing and that hedge, because the biggest side kind of coming into this, as I kind of mentioned before, was about how you have that cross-game interoperability from a wearable side. So a player could go into Fortnite and then take that same outfit and have that seamlessness into GTA. And that's the bigger part that we're starting with as well with our platform. It's that eventually how it would be is that people could come on, they could, buy these hyper-realistic, really cool digital fashion garments, but then they could actually opt in which games, starting with crypto ecosystem, they actually want to have this garment worked with. So it could be like you want the voxelated sandbox version, or you want the more 3D model, a bit more realistic Decentraland version, or you want this kind of cool pixelated Ave Gotche version that, again, it wouldn't maintain the exact, complete 3D style format throughout, but it's about how you can kind of make it fit with the look and feel of that graphic environment. And that's kind of a starting point that we see that in the future as well. If you think about more traditional space, it will be about the business model will be for players. They will actually pay per kind of opt-in that they want for the different games, for their wearables and for their identities. So we're moving fast on this side a lot. We have 2 game partnerships already. They will be going live when they have their mainnet launches, which will be later in the year and early next year. But we're starting with crypto, but the bigger vision isn't to keep and stay in crypto. Kind of after the first 2 months of just being able to get all these components together. So by the end of the year, we're really scaling this up in the traditional side. And I know probably a lot of you saying like, okay, but there's not that interoperability now for NFTs in traditional games. We're kind of taking a different approach and looking at, what are the concepts that we've been able to really look at through the NFT space, and how can we have NFTs take care of more like the supply chain side. But then when you're actually going into games, you don't really just still have to rely on, okay, that it has to be an NFT within that game just to start with in order to really be able to take on that bigger vision of the traditional market itself. So again, Moose, I will stop there. I probably brought, so many more confusing things, but yeah, that's kind of the bigger vision as well in terms of that supply chain aspect.
So that is definitely a very big vision. There's so much going on. We had a couple questions from the community actually while you were going through this process. So I wanted to share those because I think during the explanation that you were giving, you partly answered them, but part of it I think is still has room for conversation. Mm-hmm. So you had touched on the fact that, people will be able to buy these NFTs, the players will, and then they will have the options to take them into various games. So some of the questions that were presented revolve around how they get into the games. Specifically, the games have different shaders. Yeah. And obviously that gives different looks. And you sort of touched on that here at the end, with the different, like the pixelated version versus, maybe a more refined 3D model. So is that something that, is worked into the token specifically, or is that something that you actually, are going to have to spend time converting?
Good question. Very good question. So again, a part that I didn't really touch on yet, and this is more of a second stage of our project. Like I said, when we are going more heavy on this game side, it's all about how you can actually incentivize and enable designer-developer collaboration. And to start with, it's looking at more how this can be manually done and incentivized, but then eventually when it's being scaled up, you're looking at bringing in new technologies of how you can actually automate some of that process of shipping, digital fashion into games from that fidelity side, and then also the actual fitting with the computational constraints and features within that particular game. So this is kind of a bit of maybe adding a bit more complexity, but what we're also bringing forth, as I said, at a later stage, is enabling these channels for designers and developers to actually be able to have incentives to work together. And again, this is where kind of NFTs and crypto ecosystem is really suitable if you think about like streamlined payments and going into more that financial side. So eventually how it will work is this will kind of be like, like projects and proposals when people are opting in and they want this interoperability that will enable developers to be able to come and have incentives to be able to take these models and then provide that interoperability of reworking some of that FBX file to fit within their graphic environment. So the whole point is it's not about how you can just maintain this exact look within a game, because it doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you look at, say Decentraland, they have specific kind of like poly counts and all these things that you have to take into consideration. So putting this garment in there, which is at the moment very kind of high fidelity and resolution in its detail, it would kind of break a lot of the game in a sense. So, and the load time and everything like that. So to start with, it's about particularly looking at fitting with the graphic look and feel. I guess what this garment is more displaying is a lot around what I believe the future is for digital fashion and gaming and VR. It's about this hyperrealism. It's about this, extreme 3D. But to start with, it's looking at, okay, how can we actually work with and fit within these graphic environments, and to kind of build on that concept more of that seamless self-expression and identity, that still you can have this pixelated Aavegotchi version, and then when you go into Decentraland as your avatar, it's kind of like you have taken some part of your identity into that new world. So it's more manual to start with, but eventually, and our bigger kind of 6 to 12 month master plan, it's about actually building kind of these technological streams as well that will be able to kind of automate, I would say, a lot more of this process. But that kind of whole technology that we're working on in the background for that side, that's kind of a completely different story, but it is something that our team has actually been working on before we started Digitalax. It's under Monovel. I'm sure you guys might have come across that Digitalax. It's kind of powered by Monovel. So the team of Digitalax, and probably I'm getting very confusing, but just kind of spilling out everything, is the core team behind Monovel, which is another entity. We're based in SF, and we're building technology and an architecture to actually be able to streamline and enable this 3D model kind of fidelity and simulation interoperability across different game engines and platforms. So that's kind of a bigger vision of how you get to the automated side from a technological standpoint, but we're starting with NFTs, crypto, and keeping it more manual, and how you can incentivize designers and developers to work together.
So that actually feeds right into the question that was just asked in chat. Because JP Coco wondered if you're planning to have a platform, like a real virtual space, with your marketplace, so that way there will be a fitting room where people can actually bring their avatars for different games and sort of model what they're, designing or looking to purchase before they do so.
That's really cool, actually. That's an excellent kind of like suggestion, I would say, and something that we did look into. To start with, I mean, that would be kind of like a later stage. To start with, we wanted to keep it very like, how do I say, not just kind of focusing on key specific areas, but it's definitely something, this idea of like virtual fitting, and, for like just digital only garments and an avatar being able to come in and, try on different outfits. I do definitely see that as something that we'd look into in the future. A lot of it would be around, providing these standards on an avatar level as well. But yeah, it's kind of a really interesting concept and something that we would definitely, be part of one of our use cases for the future.
Awesome. Yeah, that would definitely be an awesome thing to see and be able to do the modeling with your characters. So I guess for the presentation here, what are the next steps? I know that you have the auctions going on. They're starting this week, right?
Yeah.
And we've got links to the Medium
yeah,
page.
Sure. I can show I just put up some links here. This is kind of some of our auctions. Like you said, Moose, we're going live on Friday with the first auction. So these are all single edition ERC 721. They've all been made by our designer network. The first collection is all about how we did some like funny things around highly crypto themed. So this outfit's called the Crypto Bitch. And if you look very closely, you can actually see the Ethereum symbols within the garment. So we're doing kind of more, I'd say, like fun things for the first auction about highly crypto native. We have, and I know Miss, how you mentioned the Crypto Kitties purse. So we have 2 purses here. And whoever buys it, they actually get the crypto kitty itself that it was inspired by. So we have that as well. And then to kind of maybe give it more male ones. So we're doing kind of some funny things around like crypto winter and the bear and just different stories, I would say, to start with, just to kind of get that exposure for the designers. So that's the first step on our platform. It's really this auction side and what we're doing here. But then after that, it's about bringing in this, as I talked about, the child NFT and this backing. That's the next stage. And then it's really building out the game interoperability and the peer-to-peer marketplaces around this. And as a platform, we are actually decentralizing as well. So we're not going to just be staying within the core team. We're really wanting to kind of like have these designer and developer ecosystem where they're really part of the platform and they're wanting to kind of, be in line with its future and its growth and its kind of R&D and these kind of things. So that would be over the next few months as well. It's about kind of how we can bring on more of the community to really have a say and to work with us in building, this up.
That is awesome. So I'm super excited to see not only how these auctions go starting this week, but also the growth and progression of the project. And I think that would be something kind of cool to have maybe some of the artists come to the community so they can work through kind of the artistic side of how they've been designing things, given the greater project vision. Is that something that we could get set up? It looks like the community would be excited about seeing those sorts of presentations as well. And that way we would also be able to follow up with you as, the project is progressing.
I think that's a great idea. Look, our team is super excited. We're kind of like crazy. So, myself, I work 7 days. I sleep like 3 hours at the most random times, sometimes from like 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I only moved to SF about 8 days ago, I think now. Before that, I was in Dubai, and then I'm originally from Australia. So we kind of just so excited to bring these things forward to, enable really digital fashion designers, enable developers to kind of have these new business models and revenue streams and kind of interact with digital economies and be part of our future. So look, we're up for anything. We're just really excited to kind of finally start sharing more about these like crazy concepts and ideas that we have. And, it's going to be a long journey. We have a big roadmap, like you said, and a big vision. But we just really believe in what we're doing. And we believe that we are kind of like targeting a very unique sector that has enormous growth potential in just kind of enabling a whole new era of innovation. So we're up for anything, Moose, and we're excited.
Awesome. We are excited too. And I super appreciate you coming today to share this with us, because looking at, the Medium articles as we have been doing and kind of, trying to understand the process, there's a lot there. So being able to actually talk through it has been very advantageous to understanding the bigger vision and what's going on.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I know we're getting close to that hour mark here. So I think that if there's any final questions that you have for the whale community or the whale community has for you, actually there's a question about fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if there's anything around fundraising, I think I saw on the Digitalax website.
Sure, I can go into more details on that. So our whole project completely bootstrapped. We didn't do any pre-sales, kind of like fundraising, nothing like that. The only part that we had this kind of past 2 weeks, it was called the Genesis period. So it enabled people to come on to our platform. They could contribute between 0.1 and 2 ETH, and they would receive a Genesis Mona NFT. And this would form part of our governance for the platform going forward. It was the first stage of kind of giving some governance rights over to users. And all of the ETH contributions that we are getting within this phase, we end on Friday. It's going completely to the Uniswap liquidity pools. So the team, we're taking none of the ETH that is contributed, and it's going completely there. So yeah, that's kind of that side there.
Awesome. That is good information to have. And I'm excited that we're able to get you here before all of these initial windows are closing, so that way people have the opportunity to learn about the project and take a step in if that's something that they're interested in. But definitely keeping an eye on those auctions, because this is super hype. So thank you so much for your time today and for coming to share this awesome project with the community. We'll definitely get some more meetings scheduled, so that way we can get more of the artists presented and get different perspectives out to the community and kind of learn from the processes, because a lot of what we're interested in here is the art behind the project as well as the technology, and seeing how things are created and what the process is, and kind of the extensibility. What can we do with all of these things once they're created? So
yeah,
there's definitely a lot of potential here. I love it.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys for tuning in. So we're excited to finally launch and move forward.
Awesome. We are excited for you. Good luck with the launch this week, and we will get something on the calendar here shortly.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and supporting us today. This has been a very informative presentation, and we will see you all later.
Bye.